Hello students, welcome to the next lecture on conventional manufacturing processes, and in this lecture we will discuss about different types of milling cutters. So as you can see over here, there are varieties of different milling cutters are available, and from them we will learn about some of the important milling cutters in detail. So the first one, that is the end mill cutter. Now as you can see over here, this end mill cutter has teeth over its side also and at the end portion also. So this end mill cutter, as mentioned over here, it has the teeth at the end or at the face of its circular disc, and this type of cutters are mostly used with the vertical milling machines. And these mill cutters should be selected which has the geometry and the cutting edge angle compatible with the workpiece which we want to machine, because it minimizes the side thrust, it avoids tooth and sac breakage, and minimizes the wear and maximizes material removal rate. So the selection of proper end mill cutter depends on the workpiece, that is also important. So mainly it is important for you to understand that these end mill cutters are mostly used with the vertical milling machines, and it has the teeth at the end and or on the face of the its circular disc. Now the second one is the plain mill cutter. Now as you can see over here, it has the teeth over its periphery, right? So if this is the cylindrical surface, so on this cylindrical surface it has the teeth available. So based on the different types of teeth available, it has different application. It has application on the light duty machining, it may be a heavy duty machining, maybe on helical machining. So when the cutting teeth are present on the periphery of the circular disc, then it is known as the plain mill cutter or the peripheral mill cutter. And these peripheral or plain mill cutter are mainly used with the horizontal milling machine. This cannot be used with the vertical milling machine. Next one is the side milling cutter. So as you can see over here, this side milling cutter has teeth at the side surfaces also, and also it has the cutting teeth at the end of the face also. So that means on side mill cutter, it has the teeth present on the periphery and also at the end of the face. And these side milling cutters are mostly used with the straddle milling operation as shown over here, and also for the face milling operation, and it is also used for cutting slots and milling deep and narrow slots. So this is the operation of the straddle milling, and that you will understand in the different milling operations. The next one, that is the face milling cutter. Now as it is shown here, in face milling cutter the different cutting tool in the form of the inserts are attached at the end of the circular disc as shown over here. So as you can see over here, these are the different inserts that are attached mechanically with the large diameter disc. So this type of design is provided in the face milling cutter. So these face mill cutter are consist of the large diameter cutter body with a number of mechanically fastened inserted tools as we have shown over here. And by making radially deep and axially narrow cuts, a large volume of the material can be removed using this face milling cutter. And the diameter of the cutter body, that depends upon the length of the workpiece and the clearance available on either side of the workpiece. Now these face mill cutters are mostly used with the down milling. And this face mill cutter is very rigid, and the surface finish depends upon the feed rate and the number of teeth, because as the feed rate is very high, then there are chances of very rough surface, and as the number of teeth are more, that means the maximum material can be removed easily with the application of the more number of teeth. So these are the basic design of the face milling cutter. Now the next one, that is the gang milling cutter. Now as you can see over here, in gang milling cutter multiple cutters are attached on the arbor. So as you can see, there are side milling cutters are attached, and similarly the plain milling cutter is also attached, which is indicated over here. So you can see from these geometry or this diagram that in the gang milling cutter multiple number of cutters are used to remove the material from different places in the different size simultaneously from the workpiece. So this is the major advantage of the gang milling cutter. Now the next one, that is the angle milling cutter. Now as you can see over here, in angle milling cutter, this cutter is arranged at a particular angular position. So these angle milling cutter are used when the machining is to be performed in the angle other than 90 degree. So in these cases, angle milling cutter are used. And this type of milling cutters are used mainly for the angular milling operations. Now the next one, that is the form milling cutter. Now as you can see, in the form milling cutter, it has the different geometry than all the cutters shown earlier. That means based on the cutting surface or the machining shape required, according to that, this cutting tool is given dimension. So the irregular profiles are formed on the cutting edges of the formed cutter, and this can lead to the irregular outlines or the irregular geometry on the workpiece. There are different types of standard form cutters are available based on the dimensions or the geometry required. These are the convex milling cutter, concave milling cutter, corner milling cutter, gear cutter, and the thread milling cutter. So based on the gear dimension required, the opposite dimension is given to the cutter, and this can be directly embedded on the workpiece. Similarly, based on the required thread also, this thread can be directly machined using the form milling cutter and using in this milling machine. So this thread can be easily generated of required pitch using this form milling cutter. Now the next are, that is the T-slot and the wood-rough milling cutter. Now from the name we can understand that this T-slot cutter will be useful to generate the T-slot in the component. Right, and the teeth are formed on the circumference and both sides of the cutter. Now as you can see, the teeth are formed, it's on the circumference also, and overall the periphery is given the teeth based on the requirement. So the geometry or the overall dimensions of the T-slots and the wood-rough cutters are approximately near about same, but these wood-rough keys or the wood-rough milling cutters are mostly used to cut the wood-rough keys into the component or into the workpiece. And this type of milling cutters have shanks with straight or staggered teeth. So these T-slots cutters are used to cut the T-slots into the workpiece, whereas the wood-rough milling cutters are used to generate the wood-rough keys into the component. Now the next one, that is the metal slitting saw. Now as you can see over here, it has the very thin, or you can say the width of the cutter is very low. So this type of cutter which has the very low width, this can be used to cut the slot and for the parting of operation on the component. So the cutters that are similar to the plain milling cutter, but the width of the cutter is very small, that type of the cutter are called known as the metal slitting saws, and these cutters are also used for the parting of operation and the slotting operation. So the major usage of this metal slitting saw is for the parting of and the slotting operations. Now the last one, that is the fly cutter. Now as in the milling cutter, as we have seen, in all the milling cutters there are multiple cutting edges are available, but whereas in the fly cutter there is a single point cutting tool is attached, and this simple cutter form is used for the tool room work. And as we have mentioned, it has the single point cutting tool that is attached to one end of the arbor, and it is used to remove the material from the workpiece. So these are the different types of cutter that are used for the machining purpose in the milling operations. So usage of each and every cutter you will understand in detail during discussion of the milling operations. So I hope you got the clarity about the different types of milling cutters available, and you will understand in detail during the discussion of the milling operations. So looking forward to see you all in our next lecture. Up to then, thank you.